So I'm gonna harvest the wheat and see if I can squeeze in a crop of beans. So kind of the purpose of the mulch was erosion control. You know, this would just massive runoff and it kept washing out the driveway. So it does, you know, kind of help keep this moisture here, you know, less water runoff through down the mulch. And then it's like to help the mulch from getting washed out, and just to see if you can grow stuff in mulch. Did the cover crops, you know, these, you know, the clover and the wheat were two of the better cover crops for Tennessee. Two of the more popular cover crops for Tennessee. So I wanted to see if I could grow it in mulch, you know, and kind of, you know, it's nice right there, and then it's just thin, you know, and it's nice right there. You know, this is some that I already harvested. Kind of a nicer area right in here. So it's hard to say exactly why. Since I can't say for sure, I want to build the soil, you know, keep making it better. You know, it's breaking down. It's getting there, you know. But it's still like no nutrition in it, really. All carbon. So I mean, in general, like this bulk of this wheat isn't even worth harvesting. It's just a little more than a grass. And they got these little things, you know, that it's so thin and sparse. You know, can't really do much at all with that, you know, and I want to get it more like that, you know, where it's actual growing the way it should grow. And since there's no obvious reason for the differences in growth, and because it's poor soil, you know, I want to address what I do know, which is poor soil. Or actually, you know, making it into soil, rather than just you know, mulch. Mulch did really good though. It didn't wash out at all. It probably didn't even need the cover crop to hold it in place. You know, it didn't seem to get washed out at all. So I'm gonna harvest it, you know, for a couple of reasons. One is it's about ready to harvest. So these are some wheat seeds, unripe. Kind of get an idea of how far along it is. This is from the front edge of the field up here by the shack. This is from a randomly picked, you know, like one berry here, one berry there. This is a whole seed head from kind of the lusher area. And these were randomly picked from the lusher area. You kind of see they're just about ready. Still growing at the tip. 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 But they're pretty much done. You know, they're still growing at the tips. Kind of see this one still has its anther or whatever attached. Tool you want to harvest early when you harvest by hand. As it dies and dries out, these things fall off the heads. You know, different grains are attached to different levels of goodness, you know. Some are attached better than others. You know, I don't know what this is, you know, like how easily this will fall off the stalk, you know, once it's fully ripe, you know. When you got like a combine harvesting it, you don't lose as much, you know, because it's such a quick, efficient machine. But when you're doing it by hand, you're tossing it around, blah, blah, blah. So you lose more if you let it mature completely. So, you know, one, it's pretty much ready. Two, I won't lose as much in the harvesting of it, you know, harvesting and drying and processing of it. And three, the animals are eating it, you know, now that it's getting pretty ripe. Kind of the animals are like, I need to get me some of that. Squirrels. Birds. And there's one indigo bunting that just seems to live off of this stuff. You know, it's like every meal this bunting eats is the wheat. So I'm not going to be eating this wheat. I am going to be using the straw for my poopy piles, compost toilet. And then when I get animals, so hay is like alfalfa and clover and things with nutrition inside them. With this wheat, it puts all the nutrition inside the grain head. So the stalk and leaves have like no nutrition. You know, in a bad situation, when you got animals, if you run out of hay, all you got is straw, you know, and there's nothing to forage, so all you got is straw. You know, the animals will eat straw. You know, they can eat it. There's nothing bad about it, but it just lacks nutrition. So basically the animals are filling up their tummies, but they're not getting nutrition, so they're kind of starving while they're eating. So when I get animals, I'll use the straw for their bedding in the barn. And then every so often, once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, something like that, you know? Muck out the barn. So it'll be kind of, they'll be pooping and peeing. So it'll be right now what I'm planning on doing, it'll be years before I get to the barn, you know? So plans can change. Right now I'm planning on a split level barn. I want to put it on a slope. So it'll be kind of going into a hillside, where at the low end it'll be like 2 stories, and at the top end of the hill it'll just be 1 story. And this one's got some brown going on. So one thing you want to watch out for with wheat is, I think it's wheat smut or something. It's a fungal disease where the wheat berry will get enlarged and be like a grayish brown. This is just, I don't know what this is. It's not smut, but I think it's smut, wheat smut. So when it grows on corn, it's nasty still. I seen it, you know, growing up in Wisconsin. I seen it on corn and working in the cornfields. I seen it on corn a lot. I've never seen it on wheat. On corn, it's edible. You know, it looks nasty and probably tastes nasty. But you make mole sauce out of it. M-O-L-E. That's made out of corn smut. Like fungus. You know, and people put mole on food in like hoity-toity Mexican restaurants. They probably got mole sauce to put on your something. When I start growing corn, if I get smut on it, I'm not making mole out of it. You know, it's a bit too much for me. But when it grows on wheat, it's actually poisonous. It's lethal. I think the Salem witch trials back in the day. You know, you never really know what was going on back then. A lot of cool stuff. But with the witch trials, there was like a year or 2 where there was a lot of witches being burned. And kind of one of the theories behind it is that the wheat that they were growing, they had a bad season for the wheat smut or the grain smut or whatever it is, and they started going crazy, like these women making the doughs or whatever, you know, or getting too much of the toxins from the wheat smut and going into like seizures and forgetting things, you know, and thinking, you know, so kind of if you don't know health and stuff, it's kind of like they're possessed, you know, because they're acting strange and stuff, you know, kind of like they got a demon in them, and they probably did, you know, but it was, you know, having a demon inside you is kind of signs and symptoms of that is just doing evil things like abortions and stuff. But I mean, there were signs and symptoms similar to the wheat smut. So yeah, you want to be careful. Good thing about hand harvesting like this is you can see if you got smut or not. You get a good, you know, you get to know your crop better. Third thing, you know, less loss to animals, you know, and this is such a sparse crop that the animals are taking actual percentage out of it, you know, like if this were a lush, if all of this right here were as lush as this area, you know, it'd be such a minor bit that the animals are eating that it wouldn't really matter. But granted that, you know, none of that is usable. None of that is usable. It's kind of just this little section and that little section that are actually worth harvesting. And, you know, the animals are eating maybe about 10% of it so far, you know, and letting it go for another, it'll probably take another week for it to get fully ripe, but then it'll be closer to like 15% that the animals have eaten. So it's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a less loss to harvesting and then less loss to animals. And then I want to, since I know that, you know, this isn't really good soil, I want to address that first, you know, and trying to get a whole pasture to be productive, you know, since I know that the soil's bad, I want to address that, which is basically nitrogen fixing. There's a bundle with some string, and hang it in the winter shower to dry. Once it gets gold and yellow, beat on it. So it's kind of like flailing around. You used to have like nunchucks that were flails. Yeah, so fun fact about scythes. Scythe, what the Grim Reaper uses, that was invented by aliens to spread the plague. They would walk through the fields swinging it, and it wouldn't like cut the grass or anything, but it would release the plague outside the town. The fields would be outside the towns, and then the people would go out in the fields and, you know, to do their farm work. They'd catch the plague and bring it into town. Flails look like nunchucks, and they used to swing them and beat the wheat. Once it dries out, the berries come off the stalk real easy, or they should, you know, it says. So I'm going to collect these berries, you know, let it dry for a few weeks maybe, in drying. And then, what do you call it, flail on them a little bit, maybe in a towel or something to muffle the screams, and collect the berries. And this is about 3 pounds of, you know, the seed is, they call seed a berry for some reason. Wheat seed, the grain, they call it berries. I don't know why. But it's about 3 pounds of berries, grain slash seed that I casted when I planted this area. So I want to see, first of all, if I get 3 pounds back, you know, how poor of a field does it have to be to make back what you used to plant it, you know? So I don't know if even as bad as this field is, if this field is good enough to actually produce, you know, like be enough to reseed, you know, itself and provide food. So I want to see if I can get about 3 pounds of grain from this. And then, since these are underripe, they're not fully developed, I want to see if they will grow. So I want to take these, however many pounds it turns out to be, and replant them, you know, one of these falls, you know. I planted these end of October, beginning of November. By the time I had mine planted, I think 80% of the winter wheat Tennessee had been planted, and like 72% had already sprouted from the ground, you know. So I was a little behind in planting mine. You know, I want to plant it early October, maybe, you know. And then there was that freak November snow, which probably didn't help. Hard to say how much it hurt. So, you know, I'm thinking getting it in the ground. You know, I was digging out the hole for the basement for the house in October using the backhoe. So I was behind in planting it. I wanna plant it earlier, see if these underdeveloped things will actually grow, you know, because if they'll grow and if I can harvest early and get in the second crop. So this is looking pretty good, I think. That's all pretty thin stuff, you know. I'll do a little bit more back there. Got a bunch of little piles. So beautiful. So I want to see if they'll grow. So I'm going to save it, save the berries to replant rather than eating them, you know. It's really not worth growing, you know, basic foodstuffs, you know, your wheat and potatoes and corn and rice, you know. It's mass produced so efficiently, it's a lot cheaper just to buy it, you know. But I want to have a system set up so when I do need to grow it, I already know the system, I know what to expect. You know, I didn't even know if this would grow. You know, I just scattered the seeds on top because it's like I might as well see if it'll grow. And it grew, and it grew uneven, you know, real good growth right here, but not there. So it's kind of figure out why it's not growing. You know, figuring all this stuff out now, well, it's not essential. You know, I'd hate to be relying on that wheat right there, having to pick off 2 berries per plant, you know, because I'm starving. You know, I'd much rather have a nice system set up. Yeah, see, I'm going to save them for replanting and then use the straw, you know, the stalks for pine needles, you know, for the poopy pile. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this is dark. It's not smut. I don't know why it's dark like that. Yeah, so I'm going to bundle these up with some twine and hang them from there. So the important thing about wheat is that it's nice having bread. Yeah, carbs are important, you know, like carbs, protein, fiber. Kind of need those to be healthy. Let's give it a little tap to line it up. The smaller the bundle, the faster it'll dry. All of my bundles are pretty small. you know, traditionally, these would maybe be that big around. Pretty big bundles. And then you just kind of stack them in the field in a particular manner. There's several different ways to stack them, traditional ways, so that they kind of, the top ones make the water run off from the bottom ones. And, you know, the bottom ones are on the ground and the top ones are in the air, so, you know, while the top ones are getting rain, they're not getting groundwater. And they end up drying about good. But I'm not going to do that. Giving it a little bit of rope. This is cotton string, I think. I'm not going to do it now, not going to do it ever. So there's going to be the outdoor kitchen eventually. And I'll be drying it in there in a similar fashion. Hang it and dry it. The good thing about the outdoor kitchen is it'll be screened off. And then I was gonna do a third floor greenhouse on the house, but there's just too many tornadoes, and that would just blow the greenhouse off. If I did a third story, when I was planning on doing the third story greenhouse, I was gonna do that was over the house proper. Over the outdoor kitchen was gonna be my grain drying area. So I would be hanging this stuff up over the outdoor kitchen, and then once it turns dry, little golden satchels of goodness, beating it to get the grain out. And then for storing that grain, you want it pretty low moisture. I don't know what it is, maybe 7% or something, which you never really know. But in general, the drier the better. Because it'll last longer, store longer. And in the Middle East, how they did it back in the day, all their houses have flat roofs. It's like concrete, or now it's concrete, but it's probably like, I don't know, mud back then, adobo. Yeah, adobo, mud bricks and stuff. They would spread their grain out real thin on the roof and let it dry, because it'd be hot from the sun, and it didn't rain much, so there's no problems with that. I'm just gonna do something. This isn't really a critical thing. This is experiment. See how well it'll grow. But when it is time for actually living off of it, dry can it, I'm thinking. So you always want to get the eggs, little bug eggs and things out of it, or else they'll hatch and then eat out the grain inside wherever you're storing it in. So you pack away a tub of grain, and then next year you got a tub of beetles and no grain. Good way around that is something.
heating it or freezing it kill the eggs.
And then keeping it dry.
So what I'm gonna do is dry can it in the solar oven. Do up a solar oven, you know, the box with the glass top that you put the food in, and it kind of acts as a greenhouse in the full sun and slow cooks it. So when you dry can foods, you know, people these days do it in their ovens on a low setting. You don't get that kind of temperature control out in the woods with a fire, but you can get it. Well, you can't get it easily. It's a tricky process. So the easier way to do it is just switch up the method. You know, wood fire is good for boiling, not dry canning. But solar oven, that's good for dry canning. So putting the grain in the jar with the lid off, you know, canning jar, popping those in the solar oven, filling up the solar oven with those canning jars full of grain, or whatever I'm drying, solar, you know, dry canning. And then at the end of the day, popping them out of the solar oven and putting the covers on. And popping them in the basement for storage. Yeah, I'm thinking the solar oven will kill whatever eggs are in there, you know, dry canning like that. And it's just passive. I don't gotta be cutting wood, splitting wood, feeding a fire. You know, it's a hassle doing a fire. You know, you don't want to do it if you don't have to. And just putting something in the solar oven and then going down to the lake to go fishing or mushroom hunting or something. You know, doing something fun while the sun just heats your food for you, cooks it for you. It's kind of a good way of doing it, I'm thinking. And then the good thing about grain and beans, you know, beans for the nitrogen fixing, you know, and grains because I like bread. Breads, I guess. You know, pancakes and, you know, loaf bread is gonna be hard no matter what. You know, trying to evenly cook a loaf, a big thing like that, it's not a good idea. You know, but pancakes, cupcakes, flatbreads, you know, cornbread, those are things that I can do with minimal temperature control. You know, it's just monitoring it and flipping it. But then, you know, breads in general, so you get, you know, nothing is as good as meat itself, but if you do a grain and a bean in the same meal, each one has like complementary amino acids or something. So if you do the two of them together in the same meal, it's about as good as eating meat. There's a few micronutrients in meat that you just can't get from other than meat, but otherwise it's just as good.
So that's the wheat harvest right there. Pretty much this corner right here. I may end up doing a little more there, but probably just leave that for the squirrels. Squirrels and birds. This is the bulk of it. Bulk of the good stuff, you know. There's some minor stuff left. It's all bundled up. A bunch of little bundles. And kind of on that rod. Just hang drying. So this is some that Target practice scrap wood that people had left, you know, at the roadside and were shooting when I bought the property. And I just dragged it uphill, and you know, it's just been sitting around. And yeah, I ended up putting, when I did the outdoor shower, I ended up putting it up for a roof. So it's got bullet holes in it, but otherwise it's, and nail holes, but otherwise it's good cover for this. You know, this is nice and airy, so it'll dry out, you know, and it's pretty well protected from the rain. So any rain that does go in there, you know, it'll dry out rather quickly. It won't mold up at all. It shouldn't. And it's away from the edges, you know, and kind of on this, so it'll be tricky for a mouse to find it, you know. Like mice and birds at this point would be the things to eat it while it's drying, you know, in a few weeks. But I feed the mice my canned goods, and I give them some alcohol. That one's full of hard orange juice, tuna can, and with some hard orange juice in there. That's the tail end of some hard orange juice. I'm phasing out my large containers of alcohols because they ferment too fast, you know, in this kind of heat. I'm just gonna do little 1 gallon jugs, you know, instead of 2.5 gallons at a time, and having 3 of them, you know, where it's just like it sits there for, well, anyways, letting it air dry for a few weeks.